I'm creating the ultimate Brawl Stars tier list. In order to do that, I'm going to go through every single brawler in the game, breaking them down, ranking them, and establishing which place they deserve on my list. I'm going to judge each brawler on 3 criteria. Firstly, strength. How powerful is that brawler? Secondly, toolbox. How much fun is the brawler to use and how versatile? And thirdly, skill level. Is the brawler easy to play but hard to master? How good is the skill curve on that brawler? The categories in the tier list are as follows: goated, amazing, great, good, and lastly, fine. I'm going to be real with you. I think every brawler in the game is great in its own way, which is why when I decided what to title the categories, I decided that the lowest category should be fine, because at the very least, all of the brawlers are fine. Most of them are great. Without further ado, let's get into today's brawlers. Shelly, Bea, and Gale. But I want to tell you right now, you can decide which brawlers I will pick next time. Comment below with which brawlers I should cover in the next video. I'll be tallying up the results and the winners will be chosen. So make sure you comment below. But for now, let's get into this. Shelly is the classic starting brawler and the obvious choice to start this series. Her regular attack, Buckshot, is a shotgun blast that deals loads of damage when up close and less damage the further away the enemy is. It's really easy to use and easy to auto-aim. Her super Shell, is also easy to use and it's similar to her regular attack, but much more dramatic and also destroys walls. Shelly's gadgets are a little more difficult to use. Fast forward is a short dash, ideally getting her closer to her enemies or out of enemy fire. When you use her second gadget, Clay Pigeons, Shelly's next attack is more focused for a thinly spread long-range blast that deals much more damage. Shelly's star powers are Shell Shock, which causes her super to slow enemies for 4 seconds, and Band-Aid, which means that when her health falls below 40%, she instantly gets a 1,800 health heal. This activates once every 15 seconds. So now, my thoughts on Shelly. Shelly definitely has her strengths. One of her greatest strengths being, well, these custom maps that are regularly making their way into the rotation. She shines on maps where there isn't really any room to breathe, as she can spam her super frequently. Speaking of her super, it's really strong. It allows her to counter tanks nicely and is so easy to use, as when you're auto-aiming your regular attack, you can spam the super button so that she activates it as soon as it's charged. Shelly is really easy to use and not too difficult to master. Her skill ceiling isn't really that high, and that's to be expected, as she is the starting brawler. She does the job that is intended for her. Her toolbox isn't particularly exciting, though it does feel good when she gets up close and personal with her enemies and annihilates them by spamming supers. Power level wise, Shelly is pretty weak. She was picked a few times in esports over the last year, but really not very often. All in all, Shelly is an easy to use brawler who fits her role perfectly. Her gadgets, which you unlock a little later in your experience with Brawl, add some depth, but not too much. I find Shelly very satisfying to use, but she's not exceptional in any way, so I'm going to assign her the perfectly neutral, good tier. Not amazing, not bad at all. Good job, Shelly. Don't forget to use creator code Falcone in the shop. And like this video if you're enjoying what you're seeing. Hit that subscribe button, comment below with which brawler you want me to cover in the next episode. But for now, let's move on to Bea. Bea is one of the more interesting ranged brawlers in the game. Her attack, Big Sting, only has 1 ammo and only deals around 1,000 damage. But hitting with Bea's Sting charges her shot. If you then hit an enemy with the charged shot, that shot deals a whopping 3,000 damage. But if you miss the charged shot, you have to charge it again by hitting someone. So don't miss. Bea's super, Iron Hive, deploys a swarm of drones that move and turn like jets. They will slow any brawler caught in their path. Her first gadget, Honey Molasses, drops a beehive with some sticky honey that slows down enemy brawlers nearby until the beehive is destroyed. Her second gadget, the insanely powerful Rattled Hive, unleashes 3 angry bees that swerve around Bea, dealing damage to any brawler they come into contact with. Bea's first star power is Insta-Bea Load. This star power means that if Bea misses her charged shot once, it retains its charge for another attempt. Honeycoat means that when Bea would be dealt that killing blow, she actually remains on 1 HP and is immune for around a second. This only works once every match. So what are my thoughts on Bea? Well, Bea is extremely powerful and has been a frequent pick in esports throughout the whole of the last year. She's weak up close but can spam her attack and almost always hits up close while auto-aiming. At a distance, she shines. Though her shots are slow, she's very good at suppressing the other team and also going in for that kill with the assistance of her super. I can't talk about Bea without talking more about Rattled Hive. Honey Molasses has its uses, but Rattled Hive is so good, both at dealing some horrific damage to unsuspecting brawlers and also pushing the other team back as they run screaming, trying to get away from the enemy bees. Rattled Hive was a dramatic buff for Bea, and she has seen very regular play ever since. In terms of toolbox, I find that Bea is more fun the more I play her. Learning how to bob and weave and stay alive while dealing as much damage as possible was a really fun experience. Bea is very difficult to play as a newcomer as she dies quite quickly, but you soon learn just how strong she is at Brawl Ball and Showdown once you've gotten used to her. In my opinion, Bea deserves a spot in the amazing tier. Super unique, loads of room to improve as Bea. Amazing. Great job, Bea. Let's move on to Gale. Gale's regular attack is Polar Vortex. He shoots a wall of snowballs at his enemies. Individually, they don't deal lots of damage, but he reloads quickly, and if you can hit your enemy with multiple snowballs at once, his DPS can get pretty high. His super, Gale Force, deals a small amount of damage while pushing enemies away, getting rid of those tanks that are getting a little bit too close and personal, or maybe clearing enemies out of the way of a goal. Let's talk gadgets. Gale only has one, and it's called Spring Ejector. This is a super unique gadget that allows him to put a bounce pad on the ground. It used to be a regular bounce pad but was later nerfed, so it's now just a half-length bounce pad. These bounce pads can't be destroyed, but if he tries to put down a second bounce pad, it does get rid of the first. His star powers are Blustery Blow and Freezing Snow. Blustery Blow causes Gale's super to stun enemies for 1 second if they happen to get pushed into an obstacle. Freezing Snow causes Gale's snowballs to slow down enemies for a little under half a second. So what do I think about Gale? Gale was a particularly strong pick in esports last year with his gadget before it got nerfed. Before the nerf, Gale's gadget was able to launch enemies all the way to the enemy safe in Heist and the enemy Ike in Siege. In fact, some teams were able to win games of Siege without even winning a single Siege bot. However, since the nerf, Gale's power level has been lacking. He's still a far cry away from being a good regular pick in competitive Brawl Stars. His toolbox is interesting. The gadget Spring Ejector does have the downside though of sometimes only really being useful once and then ignored for the rest of the game. There are certain maps like Mosh Pit where Gale's gadget can be helpful for launching teammates into the hot zone, but otherwise the gadget just isn't that great anymore. Both star powers have their uses, Blustery Blow being better on maps with obstacles everywhere, and Freezing Snow is better on maps where it's harder to pull that super off. His toolbox is cool, and pushing a tank away with the super can feel great, but it's not super versatile. Gale is pretty easy to play, as you don't have to aim much in order to get those hits in. The only real difficulty in learning to use him is working out how to outrange opponents effectively. All in all, we're going to put Gale in the great tier. While he's not one of my personal favourite brawlers, he was a great addition to the roster in 2020. But that is it for today. What tier would you have put Shelly, Gale, and Bea in? Make sure you let me know in the comments below. And that's it for this week. Comment below with what you thought, which brawlers you would put in which tier out of Shelly, Gale, and Bea. Play along at home week by week. We can construct our own tier lists and argue about them, and it will be great fun. Also, comment below with which brawlers you want me to cover next week. Remember, the most popular ones will be the ones that I cover, so get in on that. like this video, consider supporting me with creator code Falcone, and if you've made it this far, make sure you're subscribed and that you've rung that bell, because there'll be plenty of notifications, because there'll be plenty of videos coming out this year. Most importantly, keep on brawling.